Hi friends! Welcome to a very special social emotional learning time. I'm Miss Mindy, a school counselor, and I'm calling this Couch Conversations because I want this to be a time when we just sit regarding tough subjects. I've designed this time to be less about learning and more about talking and listening. I'm hoping that this can be a time of sharing and growing together, and I've designed it specifically for just girls and specifically for just guys. I also intend on it to be a time when you have a same gender adult that facilitates your conversation there in the room with you as I'm sharing and dialoguing from my end. This is a necessity, and it's important in leading your discussion, even though I'll be here answering some of the questions. Now, before we begin, it's important that we ensure that these couch conversations be a place for all of us to participate. It's important that you make a commitment to each other right there in the room where you are, that whatever is shared in our couch conversations is kept strictly confidential. This is not something that you'll talk about outside the group. We want this to be a circle of trust where everyone's journey is protected and respected. This means that the things that are shared in your group don't leave that group or are not talked about outside of couch conversations. This will also ensure that these couch conversations are made on the couch and they stay on the couch.
Hey guys, what's good? I'm Pastor Jason. I'm Miss Mindy's husband. She's probably over in a different room with the girls and some sort of facilitator, and you and I were here together with a facilitator. I don't know if you've ever seen that documentary called Terms and Conditions. It's kind of freaky. You might want to check it out if you have an opportunity. But I've been thinking about those terms and conditions. You know, when you get your phone and you want to download a brand new app, how many of you actually go through and read all that garbage? I mean, none of us do, right? We don't read that garbage because we already know what it says. Well, I just read this story about this woman in Florida who won $10,000 from a company because buried deep in the terms and conditions, they said, if you write us a letter, the first person to write us a letter noting that we are offering $10,000, we will give you $10,000. And so this just happened just a couple of years ago. This woman was reading the terms and conditions, you know, all those pages that nobody wants to read. She came across that and she's like, this is the weirdest thing. So she wrote in, sent the letter in, and she won $10,000. I've heard other stories. People are just checking the box. Yes, I agree. Yes, they're not even paying attention to what they're saying. And sometimes, you know, companies they know that people are doing that. So companies are putting things in there like, you will forever give us the blood of your firstborn child. You go and you click and agree, right? Crazy things. But here's the thing. The reason that we go ahead and we just skip all that stuff, or we just click yes, or we just click agree, yes, part of it's because we're just trying to hurry up and get on with it, but another reason is because we think we know what's going to happen. We already think we know what the deal is. We already think we have these expectations in our minds about what's really going to happen with that. Well, I'm just agreeing to all this stuff saying that they can send me an ad, you know, or I'm agreeing that they can use my email address, or I'm agreeing, you know, whatever it is. But here's the thing. When it comes to terms and conditions, it's not just when we download a brand new app. It's not just when we sign up for a new credit card or our cell phone bill or whatever it is. There are other terms and conditions in life too. There are terms and conditions that come along every single day. And here's the thing. Have you ever seen that movie Pocahontas by Disney, and she sings a song, you learn all the things all the things you never knew. And when I was a teenager, I was like, that's the dumbest thing in the world. What kinds of things, how can you possibly know about the things you never knew? But let me ask you right now, what do you know about death? Now, some of you are probably like, well, I know that you die. Some of you probably went to a theological place like, well, I know that you're asleep. You know, some of you are probably like, yeah, it's a scary thing. Some of you, I probably just triggered you because you're like, yeah, you're thinking about your grandparents or whatever it is. Did you know that there's this weird tradition? I'm going to call it weird because I'm living in 21st century United States, and so for me it's weird, but for these people it's not. Did you know there's a tradition in one of the Indonesian islands where every 4 years they go and they dig up their dead relatives, dress them in clothes, and parade them around town? It's true, I'm serious, you can look it up, you can Google it, whatever. It's strange, right? But that's something that I'm willing to bet you didn't know. And you didn't know that you didn't know it. So here's the point. And here's where I'm going with all of this. We all have terms and conditions in life. And sometimes we have these automatic ideas, or we have these automatic expectations that things are going to look a certain way, or things are going to go a certain way, or things are going to play out in a certain way. But the reality is, life is not like that. Life throws curveballs at us. Life throws things at us that we are not expecting. So here's what I want to start with. I want to start with, how can we begin to expect the unexpected? So right now, in your group, there in your room, you probably have a piece of paper to write on, and you don't need to share this with others unless you want to. But for the next couple of seconds, I want your administrator there in your room, your facilitator, to pause the video and give you a couple of minutes to write down for yourself, how can I learn to expect the unexpected? And then if you feel comfortable, go ahead and share that with some of your neighbors. All right, welcome back. So you've written some things down that you've been thinking about, like, how do I begin to expect the unexpected? Now, I get it. Like, how can anybody begin to expect the unexpected? It's a weird thing, but here's where I'm going with this. Every one of us in life, and this is just the way life is, it throws curveballs at us, and we end up in situations that we were not beginning to expect. Or we end up in situations that we can kind of anticipate, and we can kind of begin to know something's going to come our way. And the key to handling those things is not to say, well, hey, I'm going to handle that when I get there. I'm going to cross that bridge when I come to it. The key is to make plans now for how you're going to handle those things when they come up. The key is for us to now be thinking about, what am I going to do when that unexpected thing shows up? Those are the times that can get us tripped up as humans. In fact, James chapter 1 says that every single person is tempted, or every single person goes through trials. So that's just an expectation, not of Christians. I mean, that's an expectation of humans. If you are a human being on this earth, you're going to go through some sort of temptation. You're going to go through some sort of trial. You're going to face something unexpected. Now, James also goes on to say, like, hey, that's an opportunity to celebrate, because you're going to continue to grow. You're going to continue to develop. When you face those temptations, when you face those trials, that gives you an opportunity to overcome them and become a better person, to have more endurance, to have more patience. So, but we're going to get there in a minute. What I want to talk about right now is, how can you, as you are facing some of those unexpected things that come your way, prepare for them? Well, I'm going to give you an example that I do in my own life, and it's not necessarily related to sex or anything like that. Honestly, it's just related to time management. I found that I was constantly pulling out my phone and instantly, without even thinking about it, just tapping on that social media icon. And sometimes I'd have my phone open and I'd say, oh, I don't need this, and I would close it and I would tap it again and open it up again. What in the world? It was just constant. I was just going to something that was habitual. How in the world can I overcome that? Well, I can delete that social media account from my phone. That's a little extreme. I mean, you can, if that's what God's calling you to do, absolutely do that. But for me, that was a little extreme. So what did I do? I had to hide that icon off of my main page. I had to hide it so that I would intentionally go to find it. There's nothing wrong with social media, right? It's just a tool. There's nothing wrong with it. But if I'm going to it habitually and I'm not even thinking about it, then that's a problem. So I had to take that and hide it, if you will. Another thing that I would do, especially when I was in high school, is in order to make sure that I was keeping God at the forefront of my thoughts, I would assign like a color or a noise to be something that would trigger me to say, where is God? What is God doing in my life right now? So the color red or a train whistle, those two things would trigger me to say, what is God doing right now? How is he working in my life? The reason I'm sharing all of this is because we can start to establish signals. We can start to establish things that will trigger our minds to be thinking about what we can do. So when those unexpected things come our way, we can already have a decided response to what we do. Someone shows us a picture that we shouldn't be looking at. Now, that picture in and of itself, that's the person that took the picture, that's their issue. My issue is that it has shown up in my face right now. What do I do with that? How do I control that? How do I handle it? How do I move forward? Well, I can decide right now what I'm going to do in the future. I can decide right now how I'm going to handle that when that comes my way. Now, the reality is, if I see something that I'm not supposed to see and it elicits some sort of feelings or reaction inside of me, that's just human nature. That's just biology. That's just normal, okay? Don't let people shame you about that. But what I do want to say is what we do with that is what becomes the problem. What we do with that is what becomes the hazard or the thing that will trip us up. So going back to what James said, what the Bible says in James chapter 1, it says, those things come our way, but we can celebrate when those temptations and those trials come our way because we can use those as an opportunity to grow, to get better, to excel. So even right now, as you're sitting in this group, as you're sitting watching this video, as you're probably doodling on your paper, making notes for yourself or drawing or whatever, even right now, you can be training yourself to overcome when those situations come your way. So right now I'm going to invite you to once again pause this video, and I want you to think about some things that you can do actively. Not just think about like, hey, how can I plan for the unexpected, but what can I do actively in my life to make sure that when temptations and trials come my way, when things that are not healthy for me will come my way, what can I do to make sure that I can overcome? So I'm not going to ask you to share these with a neighbor, but I am going to ask that you take 2 or 3 minutes of silence and just jot some of those things down. Think about them, jot those things down, and then if you and your facilitators and the others in your classroom feel confident sharing with those, you can, but no one should be forced to share what you're going to do. But I am going to ask that you think about those things specifically as it regards sex and the opposite sex and things that you know as teenagers you're typically drawn into. So go ahead and pause the video right now and doodle those things, write those things down, make a plan for yourself, and then if appropriate, share them with your other cohorts. Hey guys, welcome back, and here we are at the conclusion of our time together. I just want to say thank you for taking that time, because this is a thank you for you. This is something that you are going to grow from, something that you are going to benefit from. The more that you take some time aside, some quiet time to just sit and reflect and think about, how can I prepare for those times? How can I prepare for those situations that may come my way? How can I choose now how I will decide to handle those things when they come my way? When you do that, the more you do that now, the better of a champion and the better of a human being you're going to continue to grow into being. You know, the Bible talks about the fact that we ought to guard the avenues to our hearts. That means that we don't just let anything into our hearts. We don't let just anything into our minds. And I'm not going to sit here and guilt you about the movies you watch or whatever else. I'm going to say that when those negative thoughts, or when those temptation thoughts, or when those sexual thoughts, or whatever it might be, when those things start bombarding us, the Bible says we have this opportunity to guard our hearts. So we can actually put a block up, we can put a shield up and say, you know what? I'm not going to think about that super depressing thing. I'm not going to think about that thing that makes me super angry. I'm not going to think about that thing that maybe gets me really super turned on. Whatever it is, you've already made that decision. I'm not going to allow that thing to come in and get to my heart, to get to my mind. And I'm going to choose instead to think about this. I'm going to think about rock climbing. I'm going to think about the next time I go hunting. I'm going to think about the next time that I get to go work on my car with my dad, or I get to go racing, or whatever it is. When those things come my way, when negative thoughts, I'm feeling bad about myself, or I'm feeling super depressed, or I'm really angry about what happened, or once again, sexual thoughts, or whatever it might be, thoughts of cheating, whatever it might be, when those things come our way, we already have had the opportunity to think, you know what, I'm going to intentionally shut that down and redirect my thoughts to something else. So anyway, guys, really great. Thanks so much for having me in your classroom and spending this time together. God bless.